This is a continuation of Chapter 5. Let the truth win. Many of us find ourselves connected to the rule of being defined by people and situations. Even when we agree with all of the above about our neshama, we tend to move right into self-destructive shame and worthlessness when people and circumstances dictate those emotions to us. Let's talk about how we could actually change our rule about personal worthiness. Let's find out how we could stop taking on the disempowering labels that get thrown in our direction. Let's start forming a personal connection with the beautiful truth of who we are. Our mind is a courtroom. Throughout our day, we get invited to the courtroom many times. People or situations in our life come to court with expectations, demands, labels, or stories. In the courtroom of our minds, there's only one judge. There's only one voice that makes the final decision about which stories or labels belong to us and which do not. There's only one decision maker who determines which rules we subscribe to and which we reject. The judge is our rational selves. Our rational self decides which ideas are true and which ideas are not true. And when we decide that an idea is true, we will feel connected and impacted by that idea. When we decide that something is not true, we'll reject that idea and we will not feel impacted by it. When something happens to us and a label lands in our mind, the courtroom session begins. Is this label true or is it not true? As soon as the court issues a decision, neurons are instantly fired up and the decision is experienced in action and emotions. So, if we want to feel that Hashem's presence within us is giving us infinite, unchangeable value, we need to decide that His presence within us is indeed what gives us infinite, unchangeable value. And if we want to let go of labels that contradict our absolute, unchangeable value, we need to decide that those labels are not true. Every time we decide that a rule is true, we reinforce our connection with that rule. And when we act as if a rule is true, we condition our minds to continue acting as if it's true. If you're anything like me, you've spent years acting as if all kinds of labels belong to you. You've been living by the rule that allows people and situations to define us and change our value. You followed that rule, pursuing, gaining, and losing personal value from your spouse, your children, your friends, and coworkers. That rule has been allowed to dominate your behavior. Its truth was uncontested. Still, no matter how connected we feel with our old rule, we could start forming a different connection today. We can reverse the trend of our connection the very first time we decide that Hashem's presence within us gives us infinite, unchangeable value. Over the next few hours, someone might hand you an ugly label to wear. It may be someone you love or admire. It may be a workmate, or it may be a part of your own self. Instinctively, your courtroom will follow your old rule, your default setting. The judge, you, might decide that the ugly label belongs to you, and then you'll feel disempowered. The burden of the unpleasant sentence will be like a heavy weight around your neck. In the past, when this happened, you were not aware of the process. You may have thought, as I did, that the person is causing you to feel bad. Your mind was so conditioned to follow that old rule, you didn't even realize that you were making a decision. It happened in a split second, and it happened subconsciously. Today, when this happens, don't just ride on your default setting. Press your pause button. Notice that there's a courtroom in session. Notice the process that is in motion. You might only notice the process after you're already in a bad mood. That's okay. You could still appeal the verdict. You can challenge the decision that your mind arrived at. Hey, it's my life. I'd like to be involved. Ask the judge, doesn't Hashem's presence within me give me infinite, unchangeable value? Advocate for the value of your awesome self. Insist that Hashem's value overrides all, and therefore the ugly label does not belong to you. When we talk about this in groups, people often challenge this idea. They say, but what if I was wrong? If I never call myself bad names, I will never change. In response, I say, how do you feel when you're wearing the ugly label? Does it motivate you and inspire you to change? Wearing an ugly label makes us feel bad. We feel disempowered. Nobody grows from being sufficiently criticized and knocked down. Chaya shared this personal experience. I'm an artist, and organization is not my strength. My kitchen cabinets tend to be messy. Often, when I open a cabinet, something will fall out. As it falls out, I say, I'm such a slob. Last week, after learning about the courtroom in my mind, I noticed how I called myself a slob, and I corrected myself. I said, I am Chaya. I am Mrs. Dignity. And, as it turns out, my cabinets are a mess. Then I quickly emptied the entire cabinet and reorganized it. I felt liberated. Looking back, I think that identifying myself as a slob tied me to my messy cabinet. It never motivated me to clean up. Identifying myself as Mrs. Dignity made me feel like my messy cabinet was just a temporary choice. It was separate from me. I could change it if I wanted to. And I did. We're not defined by our behaviors or habits. Habits are changeable. Behaviors can sometimes be wrong and even ugly. Our self is not changeable, and it's never ugly. The more we identify with our inner awesome self, the more we allow that self to lead our external self. The more we connect with our unconditional worthiness and respectability, the more empowered we are to change our behaviors. As soon as you start thinking about the value of your neshama and what it means to you in the moment, your mind will start buzzing with contradicting ideas. My little voice used to say, Hashem's presence is a beautiful concept, but we're being realistic, practical adults here, okay? In the past, those ideas won the court case in your mind. Today, you're able to make a new decision about which ideas you want to accept as your own truths. What will you decide? There's often a difference between what we want to accept and what we actually do accept. As you become aware of your position as judge in the courtroom of your mind, you'll become aware that you often have many conflicting ideas. At times, two opposing ideas can each have validity. This is very much like the fact that both the north and south sides of a highway are roads worth traveling. And yet, when you are traveling north, you cannot at the same time also be driving south. Similarly, if two ideas contradict each other, only one of them can be our prevailing dominant truth. The one that we believe more strongly will drive and direct our decisions. So if you want to win the court case about disempowering labels, it's not enough to theoretically accept that Hashem's presence within you gives you unconditional value. To win, you need to accept that Hashem's presence within you matters more than anything else about you, because you cannot experience the idea as being a truth unless it's actually true for you. You cannot benefit from a theoretical truth. You can only benefit from real truth, the kind of truth that invalidates contradictions, making them irrelevant without ceremonies or apologies. As soon as you're willing to let Hashem's presence within you mean more than anything else about you, your courtroom will rule accordingly. You will feel connected with your infinite value, and your contradicting, disempowering labels will start slipping away like raindrops on a plastic slide. Here's a summary, the main idea of Chapter 5. Hashem's value is unchangeable. As carriers of a part of Hashem, our personal value is unchangeable. It may feel like people and circumstances can dictate our personal value, but our mind is like a courtroom, and nobody but our own selves can dictate what we believe. We can choose to let our neshama, our awesome self, matter more than anything else about us. Here are some questions to reflect and connect. Think about the fact that Hashem himself is investing a part of himself within you. As a carrier of Hashem's light, what words would you use to describe yourself? Is Hashem's presence within you an abstract concept, or is it a fact? If Hashem's presence within you is a fact, what factual difference does it make to how you see yourself? Here's an exercise to grow your awareness. When you're feeling down about yourself, ask yourself what label you're wearing. Consciously separate your weakness from your awesome self. Use what you know about your awesome self to decide if that label actually belongs to you. And if it doesn't, replace it with a label that is a better fit.